I sold my roofing company, Jag Roofing and Sheet Metal, in 2021. And the exit was okay. But the lessons I learned along the way were way okayer, right? They were way better. And so I'm going to share those with you guys. And most people think when we're talking about growing a business and building a scalable business versus building a sellable business, those are different things. But the reality is that all of those things are actually connected. So whether you plan to keep the company forever and or pass it to your kids, or you do actually plan to hand it over to somebody else one day, strategy ideally is the same. And that strategy is that we just want to grow and run a business that doesn't absolutely rely on us. So picture your business like a machine with two dials, almost like a stove that has burners. You know, we can turn the burners up, we can turn the burners back down. Only the two dials in the business is that in order to accomplish this, right, building a business that can grow and run without you, we need to increase the value and we need to decrease the risk in the business. Now, you might be looking at that and you're like, okay, that's kind of a fluffy, those are fluffy terms. What do those actually mean? Well, since those are so amorphous and they don't really mean the same thing to you versus you versus you, I've put some definitions here. So when we're talking about, for the remainder of this conversation, or this kind of talk with you guys, this workshop, I want to define increasing the value of your business as to making your company worth more money. We do that through more revenue, getting recurring revenue, which in this instance, what we're going to talk about today is through proactive maintenance agreements. And how do we profit more from every roof that we touch? How do we squeeze more juice out of every fruit? And when we talk about decreasing the risk, we're going to talk about making the company safer. We're going to talk about making it stronger and sellable, which essentially in tangible terms or tactical terms is building a business that can run without you, a healthy team of talented people, and actually having clean data so you know what the hell is going on in the business. So in order to do that, we need two systems. We need a growth engine, which is going to increase the value, and then we need an operating system, which is going to decrease the risk. And so could anyone guess what the fundamental idea or what is the job of the growth engine? To grow the business, right? The growth engine is to grow the business. The way we get there, though, is by doing two things. The first one is we've got to get more clients, which is exactly what you just said. We do that through lead generation, sales, inspections, estimates, and proposals. And that's what we're going to hone in on first. All right? We'll talk about all three parts of these, but we'll break it down piece by piece. The way I think about getting more clients or getting new opportunities is through a 6-stage sales process that I created called the ladder. All right? And the ladder is just a little acronym for us to try and remember all of these things. So the ladder stands for lead generation, appointment preparation, discovery, diagnosis of the roof, estimates and proposals, and then revenue or recycling. And I'm going to break down each step for you guys and show you exactly how I think about this part of the business. So what's funny is, who here is on social media? Okay. So you would know, if you're on social media, that every time we get on social media, we hear about the newest, latest, greatest, sexiest, biggest new marketing idea. All right? And there's thousands of ways that we can spend money on marketing and advertising to grow our business. But in order to organize those into some buckets that I can actually wrap my head around, rather than saying there's 1,000 different ways to grow our business or 1,000 different ways to go get on more roofs, I've condensed it down into 4. Okay? And pretty much, I haven't been able to think of any advertising strategy that doesn't fit into these 4 buckets. So number 1, we can pursue opportunities. We can attract opportunities, we can pay for opportunities, and we can utilize our service department to earn referrals and return clients. And so the first one we'll talk about is how do we attract leads? Well, these are things like your website, your SEO, your content creation, things of that nature. You'll find out that in the commercial world, it's not my go-to. We can pay for leads, which is Google, LSA, PPC, Meta ads, YouTube ads, things of that sort. So I also would lump lead aggregators into this, like Angie's and Fixer and all the others. We can pursue opportunities, which is exactly what it sounds like. We're apex predator pursuing with calls, knocks, walking into buildings, LinkedIn messages, emails, things of that sort. And then earn and return is simple. It's recurring, reoccurring, and referrals. Now, the question boils down to is like, if I'm going to spend some money in advertising, where do I actually start? Well, when we think about attracting opportunities, that's the website, the SEO, the content creation. Think about your ideal client. We've got property managers, we've got building owners, we've got funds, we've got REITs, all of those types of things. The thing about the professional world is that they have a network, and they have, quote unquote, they have a guy. And so I don't start with attract because most people, like most of our ideal clients, are not on Google searching for a commercial roofer, right? They have people knocking down their doors, and they have their network. I also believe that success leaves clues. And in success leaving clues, if we look at the most successful roofing companies in the world based on revenue, the guys that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars per year, even the guys that are doing the B's per year, the billions, they're not spending money on paid advertising. They're not really spending any money relative to the revenue they're doing. So if you look at the guys like Tecta and Garland and Cinemark and things like that, it's like if they're not doing it and they have the resources to do it, what are they actually doing? And so they're focusing on pursuit marketing. They're building business development centers. They're building business development teams, and they are honing in on service. And so for us, in my world, that means two things. That's going back to our past clients and reactivating them, or it's doing something. We have a play called the Ugly Roof Strategy, which was formed from a conversation that my buddy Brian, you guys will get to hear him talk tomorrow, that was formed from that. So rather than teaching you guys, rather than giving you guys the fish, right? Rather than just walking you through the lead generation strategies of how do we reactivate past clients or how do we go get new opportunities from the Ugly Roof Strategy, I figured I'd just show you how to make your lead generation work. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're spending money on, however you guys are getting work right now, I figured I'd go through the 4 or 5 steps that I have here in what does it take to make lead generation work. So no matter what I'm doing to generate opportunities, I always lay it out with a visual process first. And so for every idea I have, it's like it seems like it's going to work great in my head, but until I put it on paper and allow the team to understand exactly what every single step is, it doesn't really click. And so after we have the process laid out, the next thing is we also need the scripts and the details. And this is what you do. We need a playbook so that we can show the team how to do it. What do they say at this point? How do they overcome this objection? The following thing is a pipeline. And so this is what most people miss in the lead generation process system. They might have a strategy that they've rolled out. They might have a playbook for it, but they don't have a pipeline that tracks these opportunities before it comes into the CRM. So most of you guys, you get a lead call that comes in. And that lead call then gets put into FCS or Dataforma or Centerpoint or whatever CRM you guys are utilizing, JobNimbus, AccuLinks, any of them. But what about all of the opportunities that your team is working outbound? You need something like HubSpot or Go High Level or some other marketing CRM to be able to track those opportunities before they're a real opportunity, before you have an inspection on the books. And so I'll tell you, Go High Level and HubSpot are our absolute go-tos, but we also have, I want to say hundreds, maybe it's not hundreds, but close to 100 offices that are still tracking all of these things in a simple Google Sheet. So literally prospect and then the stages of the process, and all we're doing is checking the box when we take that prospect through. So we need a process, which is the visual representation that tells us what to do. We need the playbook, which tells our team exactly how to do it. And we need a pipeline that shows where all of these opportunities are in the pipeline. And the most important piece, the performance scorecard. So who here tracks the amount of opportunities that you get on a monthly basis? The amount of inspections. Great. So I just see that as a lagging indicator. I want to know what are the activities that my team are doing every single day to be able to get me those inspections. And so it's real simple. For my team, every single person on my sales team and my business development team, they fill this out at the end of each day as an end-of-day report so that I know exactly how many dials did they make, how many buildings did they walk into, how many LinkedIn messages did we send out, and we understand at the end of the month, why are we successful, why did we hit our goals, or why did we not hit our goals, right? And you only know that from having the inputs to track the outputs. And that's how I think about lead generation. Are you guys tracking with me? Cool. All right, so this is really where things start to get a little meaty, all right? And so when we have an opportunity, the next stage in my process is appointment preparation. Who here would say you're fairly decent at sales, or would even vouch to say you're a sales expert? Anybody? Okay, a few of you guys. Someone help me finish the sentence. We can lead a blank to water, but we can't make it. We can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it. Yeah, so it's an interesting parable. I just think fundamentally it's not true, okay? I believe that we could walk the horse to water and that we could affect the conditions that would make it drink. We could salt the feed. We could not feed the horse for a few days. We could, lock it in. We could crank up the temperature, make it hot, which would make it way more likely for the horse to drink. So if you guys could just keep that idea in mind over the next few slides, I think it'll make things really click for you. And what I would like to do to make sure we're all on the same page is just to define a few terms. Can anyone, you can just say it out loud, can anyone define what selling actually is? So the way I see it is it's doing the things necessary to maximize the likelihood of someone buying that product or service. Sales process, if we want to define that, is a step-by-step sequence. It's a series of events that we want our team to do to create conditions where buying becomes the most likely behavior. And the salesperson is just the person that actually executes that strategy, that step-by-step process. The thing about this is that the salesperson isn't the only person involved in the sales process, right? We have the salesperson and we have who else? Who are they working with? The prospect. Right. And so when we're preparing for the appointment, we want to make sure the sales rep is 1,000% ready to rock and roll. That's physically having the things on their truck, making sure their drone or their thermal cameras are all charged up and all of that good stuff. But the more important piece is making sure the prospect starts to begin to think how we want them to think. So in the beginning, yes, we want the sales rep to perform the pre-inspection checklist, whatever that is for your company. We also want them to reach out and start warming up the lead. We want them to confirm what we know about them so far and to start asking the questions that they need to know for the inspection. But more importantly, we want automated actions to go out from your CRM or from whatever database you guys utilize to start to teach this prospect how to think. And so speaking of, I mentioned Brian Mitchell earlier, who you guys are going to get to listen to tomorrow. He was fundamental in the idea of me understanding that every roof has a life cycle. And so we want the prospect to understand. Most roofers don't really think about roofs that way. But if we don't think about a roof in the way that that roof has a life cycle and it's somewhere on that life cycle, then the prospects definitely aren't thinking about it. So we need to send emails and videos explaining that to them, and that our process in coming out to walk their roof is just to figure out where their roof is at in that life cycle, and then we can propose a solution to it, okay? So that's how I think about preparing for the appointment on both sides, like our company and the prospect, and discovery. So I would go as far as saying that discovery in the sales process is the linchpin. It's the reason that deals don't close and the reason that deals will close if you do it correctly. And so raise your hand if you guys have either read any of these books or you've looked at any of these sales processes before. The thing is, all of these, whether it's spin selling or the Wolf of Wall Street guy or baseline selling or Sandler or the Challenger sale, they have an underlying message. And the underlying message is in order to get a closed deal, we really need three things to happen. We need the prospect to trust us as the salesperson that's out there on site. We need them to trust the solution that we propose. And we also need them to trust the company that's backing us, right? Because that's ultimately who, when I say the company, it's also the manufacturer, right? It's the warranties, it's the guarantees that they're going to get. And so if they trust us, they trust the solution, and they trust the company, those are the conditions of the horse that I was talking about, where it's those three things happen, and they're very likely to move forward with us. But that poses the question is how do we make that systematically happen on every single inspection? We call them buying signals. Has anyone here ever heard the term buying signals before? Yeah, so it's real simple. A buying signal is just something that we want the prospect to feel or to say to us or to do. And if we start to see these buying signals happening, right, if we can learn to recognize them and understand what they are and to be able to identify them as they're happening, that's what basically moves the sales process forward without us having to be pushy salespeople, okay? And every signal that we see basically means they're getting one step closer to trusting us, the company, and the solution, which are the three things I said all the sales processes teach. So these are the 10 buying signals that we've been able to identify. And so I've identified these, I started out with 6 or 7, but then through working with all the companies that we have, we've had guys, bring more to the table. So we see it as 10 things that have to happen in order to be very likely or to almost guarantee that a deal closes. The way that we get these buying signals to happen, we get the prospect to feel this way and to say these things and to do these things is we just ask leading questions. And we call these discovery questions. I won't get too far into the weeds and read you guys like every single question, but I will talk high level at what they actually are. So we want to understand like what is the problem and what is the current state of that. We also want to understand what is it costing them. And I'll give you guys an example. So I walked a roof last year. The whole ugly roof lead generation strategy I was talking about, we ran a campaign. And I actually went out and walked all of those roofs. And so in 33 days, we booked 7 appointments. And on one of those appointments, it was a medical facility. And I walked in, and the guy basically was like, hey, you're like the 3rd roofer that came. I'll show you how to get on the roof. And I was like, no, we've got to sit down. I've got to go through these questions. Because these discovery questions, if they don't happen, if I don't get these questions answered, I don't get on the roof. I'm not going to waste my time going up and walking a 1,000-square property when I don't even know what their problem is, what their desired solution is, do they plan on selling the building, what's the decision-making process, what's the timing of what they're trying to do. And so if they won't take the time to answer those questions, why would I take the time to walk the roof? And so we want to understand what it's costing them. And my point was, at that medical facility, I pulled it out of the guy. I said, is this interfering with the day-to-day operations? Is this costing you time or energy? And he's like, dude, it's been so insane. Every time we have a leak, not only do we have to displace the tenant, it was a long-term long-term care facility. Not only do we have to displace them, but I also have to fill out all this report for the state, for the health department. And he went on and on for 5 or 6 minutes explaining the pain of it. And I'm like, buying signal. That's the problem I'm here to solve. And so then we also want to understand what is the desired outcome. A lot of times, obviously, it's that they want the roof to stop leaking. But is it a long-term fix, or are they just trying to Band-Aid it because they're trying to sell the building? And what's the timing of this, right? And then we also want to know who makes the decisions and what is the decision-making process. If I know a roof isn't going to be decided on until when they renew capital expenditure budgets in October, but it's February, or I guess it's March now, well, that changes the urgency on my end to what I'm working towards for their proposal, okay? And so next one is diagnose the roof. And so when we're talking about diagnosing the roof, the automotive industry really nailed this, okay? They're probably, 20 years ahead of us when it comes to service and maintenance. It's like on every corner we go to, or every corner you drive past, there's a Jiffy Lube or a, 5-minute oil change spot. And what's cool, or what I admire about the automotive industry and how they operate in service is like, you pull in and you have something that's wrong with your roof, or your engine, right? The engine's ticking. Well, they pull it into the bay, they hook it up to the diagnostic, and they come talk to you in 10 or 15 minutes, and they give you an entire list of everything that's wrong. They don't just tell you what the engine tick is, right? They might also tell you that, hey, you have a tail light out, and this fluid's low, and that needs done, and your tires, need to be swapped out, or whatever the case might be. And they're looking at the entire vehicle as a system. And so I always get a lot of pushback from sales reps where it's like, hey, look, I go out, if they call for a leak, I go out there because I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to try and oversell them or sell them things that they don't actually need. And to that I say, if you took your truck into that same bay that I was just talking about and they just fixed the motor tick, but while they were under there, they also noticed that your tires were bald and your brake pads were worn, and your wife goes and picks up the vehicle, and on the way home, she happens to crash the vehicle. Probably not going to be too happy, right? How would that make you feel? Probably pretty shitty. But it happens every single day in roofing because a customer calls about a leak, we inspect the leak with tunnel vision, we ignore the rest of the system, and we miss the disasters waiting to happen and the opportunity to take the roof off the market, or as Brian, I've mentioned him a couple times, as he would say, take the roof off the streets. And so it's not just about sales, it's about having the professional responsibility of taking care of that person's building. And so a roof system is serving a purpose, right? It's protecting the building, it's protecting the people, it's protecting the operations, and they're counting on you to see what they can't. That's our job as salespeople, right? For the third of the room that raised their hand. And so in my world, we diagnose the roof, we apply a grade to it, and then we align with the client before we move forward. How many of you guys have spent 4, 5, 6 hours on a roof? Raise your hand if you would. If you've spent 4, 5, 6 hours on a roof before, only to never close the deal. Yeah, I figured pretty much all of us. And so the idea with this is like we want to understand all of the stuff from discovery. We want to get a quick overview of the system of the roof and have a conversation to say, hey, are we aligned in how we move forward? And so the way we do it real quickly is conditions reports. The goal of the condition report is to ultimately find what the grade of the roof is. But the way we do it is, the goal is to not just fix the immediate problem. It's also not to do a full-blown takeoff. What we're looking for is like, what is this system that we're actually walking? What is the deck type? How does the roof drain? And what's the field conditions? Is there cracking, vegetation, wear and tear? And then, most leaks, we all know they come from terminations and penetrations. And so it's like, what are the conditions of those things? That gives us the overall system performance, and we're able to utilize the grades to steer us into how are we going to monetize this opportunity. All right? And so we come down with all of that information, and this is the checklist we utilize when we have a direction and alignment conversation. So to give you guys an example, that medical facility I was talking about with the guy that was telling me all about how he had the pain points of having to fill out the paperwork for the health department. When I came back down, it was 600 squares. It took me 35 minutes to walk 600 squares and to be able to do this. I'm not measuring every curve. I'm not measuring every piece of flashing. I'm not looking at every nook and cranny. I'm just trying to get a general overview. And so all we're doing is we're reviewing the conditions reports. We are explaining what the grade actually means. We are agreeing on a path forward. Can we do repairs? I've had so many situations where, like, hey, the roof is an A, B, or C, but they're like, no, I have the budget to replace the roof, or I have the budget to do a restoration, and we need to do that. And so it's not always that they need to save money. Sometimes they need to spend money so they don't lose their budget. So we want to align on the budget, align again on the timeline discussed, and then get the verbal green light before we move forward. Then we can go spend the 4 or 5 or 6 hours on the roof doing the complete takeoff, okay? And that's how I think about diagnosing the roof. All right, and so estimating, I'm sure one of these guys that are really smart and know the nooks and crannies of estimating are going to share that with you guys over the next few days. So really what I wanted to share is like the psychology behind proposals for me. And so last week I was blessed to have Brian join, well, actually for the last couple weeks, he came to my community and helped me do some estimating workshops. And I rolled this out for the first time to all of my clients last week. So you guys are like the second group of people to actually see this. And so I just think about it as like the estimate is what, it's the scope of work with numbers applied to it. But the proposal has to tell a story. And if we're doing all of this work to gather this information in discovery, we're going through and asking preparing the client for the actual appointment and doing all of the preceding steps in the sales process, we should probably take all that information and put it into make a story around it so that we can sell them on the actual story. Every movie, every piece of media that you guys watch is constructed with a storytelling framework. And so if big media and Hollywood has figured out that that's how you get people's attention and that's how you get people to latch on to what you're doing, it only makes sense that we would do that in our proposals, right? We need a storytelling framework, and this is how I've put it together. So first thing is, what did we hear from you? Their current situation, the issues, what are their goals? And we want to frame what they told us in discovery. There's a point to discovery. And then we want to go through the diagnosis. So what did we actually find on the roof? Right? So just outlining all of the stuff we found. What does it mean for your business? What is the cost of saying no? Like if they don't move forward, what is the pain that they're going to endure? What is the risk that they're going to continue to take on inside of the business? And so we outline all of that, right? What is the risk, not only in like what is the risk, but also what's the dollar amounts associated? What do we recommend? Right, pretty straightforward. Most of us are doing that. And then proof that they'll get this result, so case studies. And then guarantees, terms, next steps, and maintenance agreements, okay? Pretty straightforward. All right, so earlier I said in the growth engine, there's two things that actually grow a business. We can get more customers, but then we can also get more money from every customer or from our existing customers. All right? We talk about proactive maintenance. There's an ugly truth. And like I said, there's like 5 or 6 guys that are going to talk over the course of the next 2 days, maybe more. And like they're all going to talk about how great service is, because it is. But there is an ugly side to it. And it's that service departments can feel like an anchor that we're dragging around. I've had plenty of companies come into my world that feel that way. I know Brian's helped me with a handful of them in the very beginning too. And they can suck if they're not positioned correctly. And so when service agreements are positioned wrong, you own every leak on the roof. So it's always your fault. Every callback starts to eat into profit. Every mistake turns into resentment. I actually had a guy from a Tecta office I met up with him and talked at RoofCon about a month ago. And he told me, he's like, oh, we're actually not pushing service in our location, right? I think most of you guys know Tecta's pretty fragmented in how they run their offices. This side of the country might look vastly different to these guys. And so this guy's particular office in Oklahoma is not pushing service because it was ruining his relationships. And what happens is they start to expect you to be able to wave a magic wand and just solve all these issues on the roof. And so in my book, there's only 2 reasons that we would do service. Number one, it has to pour into the relationship. It has to blossom that relationship. It needs to pour into it. It needs to make it better. And the reason we want the relationship is to get more profit. And so these things don't happen when things aren't positioned correctly. And the way I explain it is that we want it easy to sell for the sales team. What we want is a service offering, a preventative maintenance offering that is easy to sell, but also easy to deliver. We don't want to, it's like, dude, if we promise everything under the sun, we can make it easy to sell at the right price. But then our team has to fulfill on it. And that makes a very weird dynamic. So the way I see it is we want to make it easy to sell, we want to make it easy to deliver, and we want to have a balance of like a Jiffy Lube and a AAA network. And so this was kind of a new idea for me. On one end of the spectrum, on this side of the teeter-totter, we want to do the tire rotations. We want to do the oil changes. We want to swap the wiper blades, right? We want to keep the roof dry. We want to keep it clean. We want to keep it sealed up. But we also just want to be there as like a peace of mind for them that like they don't have to. I have a buddy, Emmett. You guys are going to hear him talk tomorrow as well. And he has this fancy little booklet that he takes to his, he might even show it to you guys tomorrow, that he takes to his sales appointments. And it explains, like, hey, look, the problem you're dealing with as a property manager is that you have to call 10 roofers to get 5 to answer, to get 3 to show up, to get 1 proposal. And, like, that's what AAA solves in the automotive world. Like, if you break down at 3 a.m. in the morning, you know somebody's coming to pick your car up. And so our only promise really needs to be, as a roofing company to our prospects or to our clients, is that our only promise is that the roof is absolutely going to leak. 1,000%. The roof's going to leak at some point in time. But we promise to make it happen less often, catch it quickly when it does happen, and bring a resolution to the table. And so when you position it this way, you're basically just selling the priority access and the professional response, that they're in good hands. And when we're able to do that correctly, when we're able to position the service offering, the preventative maintenance offering, in a way that is easy to sell and easy to deliver, that's when we're able to get the positive reinforcements that proactive maintenance departments will give us, which is what I call market domination. So to anchor this in for you guys, let's just say that today, we all went out and we sold a $20,000 roofing project. For you, it might look way different than what it looks like for this person, but it doesn't matter what kind of roofing project. We just signed a $20,000 agreement, okay? And so if your gross margin on that is 40%, you make $8,000 in profit. Not bad. But what if you also lock that client into a $2,000 a year service agreement at 80% profit margins, and now in less than 4 years, that client is worth double the amount of money to you, with no additional cost to acquire, in gross profit, before additional scopes of work. And it changes everything, because you go from this, where like if Omar gets a client and I get a client, it's worth the same thing to us, right? And so it's really a race between Omar and me to just see how many clients we can get. But when we position it as like I get that client, and they're worth double the amount to me that they are to Omar, we're able to have a massive unfair advantage to every other company in the marketplace. You can spend more money to acquire new clients than anyone else, right? So if average cost to acquire is $4,000, well, guess what? You can spend $6,000 and still come out ahead versus the other company, right? You can outmarket them, you can out-advertise them, you can outgrow them, and I didn't make this up. Like, market domination and scale economics is a term that's been around for a long time. Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, it's like one of their plays that they would inject in all of their Berkshire Hathaway companies. And so when you make more, this is exactly what they say. This is actually straight out of the book. When you make more money per client, you can aggressively reinvest into growth while your competitors are stuck playing defense. They can't afford to market at scale, they can't afford to hire the best people, and they can't afford to dominate their city, but you can. Okay? And that's the growth engine. Get more clients, get more money out of each client. That will continuously grow the business. And so, if that is the business, the functionality of the growth engine is to do that, right? We want to go from small business to big business. But the only problem is that when the business grows, we add complexity, and things become a little bit harder to manage. We have people issues, we have cash issues, we have less time because we're needed in all aspects of the business, and there's no real clarity of every nook and cranny of like what's actually going on. And so I just want to share with you guys real quickly, like these were real life lessons that I learned over the last 15 years. So what is not the solution as you start to scale? And so we all know what it looks like to work a 15, 16-hour day. That's nothing that you guys probably haven't thought of, right? Trying to create more hours in the day. We all know that that doesn't work. A belief that I have culminated over the last few years is that the more valuable you are to the business, the more the business relies on you, the less valuable the business actually is. But it basically says, hey, you want to go document every single step and every single process into an SOP library so your team, everyone knows exactly how you want things done. So we tried it. This was a screenshot from 2017 or 2018, and this is just what I could fit on the page. There were like 106 or 109 different SOPs that we outlined, and no one ever opened this thing except for me because it was, I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. So that wasn't it, and I believe that things do need to be documented, right? I have playbooks, but I believe it's only the most critical items. So as an owner, if you tell yourself like, oh, I can't replace myself because no one else can do X, or no one else can do Y, I've got to keep doing that, those are the things that need documented. Those are the playbooks that need documented. You don't need 106 SOPs. 2021, I sold my business. I signed June 1st. I signed earlier in the year, but basically June 1st was my first day out of the business. And a few months later, after I kind of floated around the larger company that, just helping them out with whatever they needed, the nationwide company that bought us out, they made me an offer to go down to Austin, Texas, and basically revive the Austin market. They're doing $5 or $6 million a year. They got hit with a hellacious storm. Anyone here work the Austin market? A few of you guys. So 2021, we got smacked with, the 5-inch hail, and up in the Round Rock, Pflugerville area. And went from 6 million to 18 million, and it devastated that office. It was like the profits weren't there. Basically, about killed everybody. They tripled the business overnight. And so I was hired to go in and basically take over the office and grow it the next year. The thing is, they had a $6 million company. They did $18 million during the storm, and corporate set our revenue goal at $22 million the next year. I'm like, okay, something doesn't make sense here. Like, with what resources? But I said, no problem. I said, it's a math problem. So if we hire 30 salespeople at an average of $750,000 each in sales, we can solve that problem because that comes out to $22,500,000. And I was like, so that gives me a little buffer room to hit $22 million. And didn't shake out that way, okay? So hiring more people was not the answer, and what I learned from that is that good people don't fix broken systems break good people, and we sure did a lot of that. So the actual solution is really just that we need a true operating system. And so it's just 3 main steps. So step 1 is we just want to automate the day-to-day with systems and people, okay? I talked about this a little bit when we were talking about lead generation, but we want to do it with the whole business. We want to take what we do out of our head and put it on paper. When you have a new hire and you're able to bring them in on day one and show them this is exactly what we do, this is how we get clients, this is how we fulfill for clients for each division of your company, it's a massive transformation in people buying into your organization. So that's step one. Starts out looking like this, right? We build them out on a whiteboard, and then you get something fancy like that. The second thing is I said we don't want to document everything. So we go back to our workflows like this, and we just say, what do I feel like I can't do? Or what do I feel like I can't pass off? And we build a playbook for whatever that is. The third thing is basically outlining who does what. So once again, we jump into the workflows, the flow charts, whatever you may call them, and we outline what role within the company is going to own each step. My favorite saying or quote is that we want one throat to choke, one chest to poke. Did I say that right? One throat to choke, one chest to poke. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that multiple people can't do each step. It just means that there's one person ultimately responsible. Okay? And that's step one. That's showing what we do, how we do it, and who does it. That is the definition of a system. And the result is just that you no longer have to be in the weeds when everyone knows what we do, how we do it, who does it. Okay? Simple enough? Step two, we want to automate the process of fixing what is broken and have a mechanism that allows us to understand when we're doing good and what it's going to take to become great. And so the first thing we do in step two is we design a metric scorecard. Okay? We just want everyone to know what numbers are actually important to us. One thing I'll say about this is like when we build a scorecard, there's three main things that every scorecard in my organization has to have. And it's number one, we have to have an owner of that scorecard. So whoever owns that stage on the workflow also owns the metric in the scorecard. We also have the status, which every week gets updated, red, yellow, or green. If it's red, that means we're off track and you don't have a plan. If it's yellow, we're off track and you have a plan to get back on track. And if it's green, we're on track. It's pretty simple. I look at the scorecard and I know, okay, we're not doing so hot in marketing, but at least we have a plan. Or we don't have a plan and they need my help. And the last piece is that I keep this manual. I hate automated reporting because it sacrifices the ownership of the metric. If you get your CRM to report manually or automatically, then it's like the sales manager and the salespeople and the service techs, they don't have to be aware of their numbers because the machine's doing that for them. Okay? And one last thing I'll say on step two is that when I read all of the books, Traction, Rocket Fuel, E-Myth, Run Like Clockwork, they're all great ideas. The issue with all great ideas is implementation. And even when we would implement these different parts and pieces of the systems, these tools into the business, well, guess what? 6 weeks later, we forgot that we even had those conversations because we're working on something new, and it's like, in the ether of nothingness. It's lost in a black hole somewhere. And so the only way to keep all of this stuff in front of you and to keep an operating system running is to have a meeting cadence. A weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual meeting cadence that is extremely structured. It's not that I want people to have more meetings, it's that I want them to have better meetings. Is there anyone that runs those weekly meetings, and when you leave there, you're like, that was all right. It was kind of a waste of time. We didn't really get anywhere. We went in circles. What we want is just a structured format to keep this stuff in front of us, all right? And step three is, how many of you kind of know where you want to take the business, as an owner, how many of you kind of know where you want to take the business over the next 3 to 5 years? And so step three is all about taking that vision and making it big enough and wide enough that everyone else's dreams can fit inside. What I mean by that is like subconsciously as an owner, every day I'm making decisions without really knowing I'm making decisions. I'm not thinking through like, here's my 4-step checklist to make every little decision, right? Josh or Tanner or Ryan or Brian or whoever might ask me a question, and I just have an internal framework. I have my core values, how I see the world. I have where I see myself and where I see my business in 3 years. And we want to take that subconscious framework and put it down on paper so that people can, at the end of the day, make decisions as good as us or even better than us because they actually follow a framework. Okay? And so in doing this, I know I skipped past a lot of this. I just was trying to get through some of the minutia. But basically, we just want to outline a decision-making filter. So where are we going over the next 3 years? What are our core values? What's our why? Why are we in business? Who are we here to serve? And then what are the strategic anchors, which are like, why do we have an advantage over every other roofing company in our market? And when you get that on paper, it's really powerful. Where are we going over the next 90 days? If this is where we're going in 3 years, what's our plan in the next 90 days to make sure we're on track? And then actually implementing all of this stuff with those meeting cadences. And so like I said, at the end of the day, when step 3 is done, the result we're looking for is that people can make decisions as good or better than us. The 3 things that it takes to grow a business, to scale a business beyond you, to get the founder's touch out of every crack and crevice and nook and cranny of the business, and how you start to get some freedom back as the owner. Okay? And when we're able to do those things right there, get more clients, make more money from every client, we're able to step out of the day-to-day with the operating system. We're using those 2 dials, right, that we talked about at the beginning. We're going to increase the value, we're going to decrease the risk, and we're able to exit the field, right? We're able to get off the roofs ourselves, which I think a lot of you owners are already there, but we're able to exit the day-to-day. I mentioned that we would talk about one more thing, and that was exits, okay? And so there is a 3rd dial required to exit the business. And this is what I learned in going through my own exit with RBI in 2021. And so in order to exit the org chart, and that doesn't always mean that you exit the entire business, right? I still was around. I was still an investor. I rolled over equity I had ownership shares of the bigger piece of the puzzle. But we need to be able to choose. We have to choose the right model, okay? And so there's many companies in my container right now. We've got about 230-ish companies. We've got about 230-ish companies in my container in totality, meaning the inactive and active clients that we've worked with. They're getting offers all the time. Raise your hand here if you've gotten or you've had people reach out to you about potentially making an offer on your business. Yeah, pretty common. So the issue is that, number one, they're not that serious. They don't know exactly what they're looking for. But the issue more so for you is that selling as an individual, there's something called consolidation arbitrage. And I'm going to explain it to you guys on what that actually means. But basically, if you look at my chart here, I'm running a portfolio of companies with partners all across the country. And the first 4 companies that we analyzed, is there anyone here that knows who acquisition.com and Alex Hormozy is? Okay, some of you guys. It's a boardroom group that I'm a part of. And this was an analysis that I took to them just a few weeks ago. And so this is what's called a cap table. And there's 4 companies listed out here. Company 1, Company 2, Company 3, Company 4. Now, the revenue of those companies, like top line revenue, total sales, is listed here as well. So Company 1, $2.5 million, all the way up to Company 4 that was just shy of $10 million. Who here has never heard the term EBITDA? Okay, all it means is the money that's left over at the end of the year. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization is a technical term, but just know it's like your net profits. It's your net profits without debt and capital expenditures. And so these companies, there's their top line. That's what was left over at the end of each year. And individually, this is the multiple that they were getting offered. So multiple is how you factor in your payout. So if you had company number 1, you have an EBITDA of $300,000, you have a multiple of 2, you walk away with $600,000. So we went through that and looked at the offers for each of these individual companies. And then we took it to the board and we said, okay, by the way, acquisition.com, they do acquisitions. And they said, if we took all 4 of these exact companies and we bundled them together, we consolidated the services, like we consolidated the finances, the CRM, the estimating division, the lead generation systems, the call centers, and we looked at this as one deal, this is actually what company number 1 becomes worth. They go from being worth $600,000, but because they're a part of the group, they're now valued at let's jump back here. So multiple, go down to the last cell. So instead of getting a multiple of 2 or 3, they get a multiple of 9 because of the consolidation arbitrage. Does that make sense to you guys? Has anyone else in here heard of this before? figured. So Ryan is actually the CEO of our group. If you guys are curious about this at all, you should grab him before he has to leave out of town. Ryan, will you raise your hand for a second? So Ryan loves being in the limelight, by the way. This is why you see this happening across the industry. So this is obviously the residential roofing platform. I don't have one of the, I didn't have a picture of the commercial platforms all put together nice and pretty like this, but I stole this one from Facebook so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. The entire reason that the fractured industry of the roofing industry is consolidating is because of this, all right? And if no one's ever told you guys, you're welcome. This is, before I step off stage, that's all I have for you guys today. It's how to grow a business, how do we scale a business with an operating system, and then what are we doing to consolidate companies.